I'd like to thank Jeff and the BevNet and Nosh team for giving us this opportunity to bridge the health food to the cannabis space. And they've created a pretty parallel experience. So yesterday we were at a beautiful forum with hundreds of people, leaders in the health food space. And today we navigate to a very off the beaten path, amazing hotel. You walk in, there's no sign to tell you where to go. There's no one to greet you. You get on one elevator, you get off that elevator, you walk down a long hallway, you see some other people that are going where you're going, and so you form a group. You find what seems to be an elevator that goes to nowhere, but you're going to the top floor. And when you get there, you get a view of the world. You're surrounded by the most innovative and smart people, and then the sun sets. So it's a pretty great experience that they've brought us to. How does it feel to be in the biggest cannabis market in the world? It's such an opportunity. It's such an amazing space that we're in. So how did we get here? My story that led me to the cannabis space is not the usual cannabis story. I'm trained in the law. After I graduated from law school, I was a death penalty clerk in the Office of the Public Defender in Northern California, and very quickly realized I could make a choice to be a really good single mom or a really good attorney. That was an easy choice. I chose the former, which led me to a 17-year consulting career in Northern California for artists, designers, and entrepreneurs. That gave me such diversity in what can happen in so many different businesses, and at the time provided me with the amazing healthy lifestyle that I needed. I was a fit model for a major outdoor brand. I was keeping up with the Chesapeake Bay Retriever and 2 soccer teams when I was hit out of the blue with a genetic disease that totally leveled me. At the time, I couldn't find a find for my disease that I had in Western medicine. So I did what I'd done before in life, and I turned to food. I discovered that I was a vegan when I was in 3rd grade in Texas, and I promise you that has more equipped me to navigate cannabis or any terrain than anything else in my story. So I looked to food, and I found within the vegan community the raw food diet. So it was a quintessential YouTube story. I went on a 30-day raw diet, and in 30 days, I was healthier than I'd ever been, looked better, had more energy, so I fully embraced the raw lifestyle. The problem came when I tried to put the snacks into my then teenage son's life. I remember distinctly he came home from school one day, he came through the door and said, "Mom, please don't put those raw snacks in my lunch, they taste like swampy cardboard." So if you can remember back 10 years ago, it's a pretty accurate description of what was out there. So I turned our home into a raw food R&D kitchen and became the crazy raw snack lady. When I walked into a room, people looked at my handbag like, what does she have today? What is she gonna give us today? My career goal was to make a pivot when my son went to college and try to knock one out of the park for myself. When that time came, I realized I was already doing it. I was running raw cleanses, I was making smoothies for people, people on planes were bumming my truffles from me, and it just seemed pretty obvious. So we had some great initial success. I moved into making the truffles for a couple of local innovative juice bars and health food stores, and just incredibly got into Whole Foods. I went to a Whole Foods 101 weekend, and on the spot they accepted me. So I realized I had something that I could work with. We were just at the point where we'd penetrated the West Coast with our truffles and our cookies, and I was about to launch nationally. For the first time in my life, I suffered from lack of focus and distractibility. At the time, I was the head of the marketing, head of sales, head of production, so it was a pretty typical entrepreneur wearing many, many hats. So I went to an executive coach in San Francisco, and lucky for me, he was actually a classically trained psychiatrist from Columbia. And within the first few minutes, he said, "Have you ever been tested for ADD?" I was 46 years old at the time, and no one had ever mentioned ADD to me in my life. And I thought, if I have ADD, I have questions for my first grade teacher, my second grade teacher, my third grade teacher, my mother, my aunt, my grandmother. And sure enough, I had ADD. I don't have the H, so I don't have the hyperactivity, which is usually the diagnosing factor. So he put me on the classic ADD drugs, and my focus was great. I wasn't distracted. My body felt like a roller coaster. So I did what I had done before. I turned to plant medicine. I waited till he went on a 2-week vacation to Florida to give me the ample time to put my research into practice. I totally went off the ADD drugs and went on CBD. I did a 20-to-1 CBD THC ratio, and when he came back, he was floored. He said he'd never seen results like that. So at that time, we were pre-national launch, and I looked around. It was 8 months before the recreational California vote, and I thought, I think I can do this. I think I can turn this from a raw food company to a CBD national company to an edibles company. And so we are the first company who has moved through all 3 sectors in this space. Our snacks brand is accepted into UNFI and KeHE. We launched a base brand in Q1 into Walmart. And I think we sit next to Sprig on many of the shelves in Bristol Farms, a lot of the natural grocers, and we're in discussions with UNFI. So I saw this raw opportunity, 5th largest economy in the world, delicious snacks, legalized cannabis. That sounds pretty easy, right? No, let's get into the weeds on this. So for product, when dealing with edibles, everyone has a story of someone who has taken an edible, we've heard them today, taken an edible, and 2 days later they recover. So coming to the cannabis space from a food perspective is unique. Usually the edible space is either cannabis connoisseurs who have moved into making edibles or folks that are traditionally in the cannabis space. So the challenges that we've had, I'm so glad that Cassia laid it out so I don't have to explain the difference between CBD hemp-derived and cannabis-derived, but that's been a huge stumbling block for us this year, is trying to educate people what's sold in retail, what can you buy, which product of ours can you buy in Terminal 2 in San Francisco, and which one can you buy in a dispensary. So there's been a lot of education. Dosing was huge. So we come to the space as a food brand, and to us, CBD and THC is a very volatile, important ingredient. So we've put our formulations through food scientists, and the same GMP rigor that Evan touched on so early, that's important to us. It's part of our food brand, so we've incorporated it into our CBD manufacturing facility, and then also into our THC. Lab testing is Rochambeau. You know, California, the lab testing has been difficult to say the least. So what we did was we found 3 labs that we could trust. We narrowed it down to 1, and then we taught that lab how to test food. So in this space, you've really got to look at your product and what you need for your product, and then how to educate people on how to help you with those services. Taste and formulation is huge in edibles. With single serving size, we wanted to move away from a bar that has 95 million milligrams and you cut it into 2,700 pieces to 1 cookie, 1 serving. So we worked with a food scientist from M&M Mars. We put it to the ultimate test. We flew to Pro Verde Lab in Boston, which is just the gold standard of labs, and they looked at our test from California and they said, oh, California tests, you know, they don't know how to test for homogeny. they'd never seen homogeny so low. And I said, well, let's test. And so they tested our products, and they came back to me and they said, we have never seen homogeny that it looks so good. And I said, well, thank you very much. We've really worked on our homogeny, looking great. So it's moving into your product and understanding what your needs are to make it work, rather than relying on people for answers, because those answers don't exist yet. Well, if you don't like the regulations today, just take a long nap, because they'll be changed when you wake up. It's rock, paper, scissors. In California, from the testing to the packaging specs to the product specs just change like a roller coaster. So what we've done is we watch, we listen, we wait until things are changed. If we think they'll be changed back, then we hold off. But it's a huge factor, and there are big implications. Before we launched in 2018, our portfolio was 5 milligram, 10 milligram, 25 milligram, and 50 milligram. And at the end of November, California reduced the doses to 5 milligrams and 10 milligrams, and we lost half our portfolio and substantial inventory. So you really have to look ahead and prepare for what might happen and not overly react to what has happened. The lack of infrastructure. Again, with your product, you've got to figure out how to move it through the system and get the things that you need. We're a licensed, our THC brand is we have a licensed facility in Long Beach, and through the challenges of finding distribution, we decided to apply for our own distribution license and go direct. So we're a fully licensed manufacturing with distribution capabilities that takes us into last mile dispensaries. The sell-in process does not exist. If you have the bud tenders text and they will return your text, then you're in good shape. Otherwise, it's much like selling into independents. There's not a structure, there's not a process, there's no category review, there's not 2 times a year when the buyers get together and choose products. So you just have to navigate that as well. The supply chain issues have been spoken about here. It's building to the point where you work with partners that you trust and that you know you're going to do the best that you're going to do, and they're going to do the best that they're going to do, and you're going to link up. There's just so much that changes when someone has a regulatory issue or a supply chain issue. It's really just looking for resources to try to improve and keep your product stable. The banking is coming along, but that's a challenge as well. I suggest if you have a cannabis brand, keep enough cash for the next 2 payrolls, just in case. And so the Good Bites group is soaring high. That's my last pun. We have 3 distinct companies because of the regulatory issues. We have a food brand, we have a CBD company, and we have a THC cannabis company. We work together to buy resources, but the main challenges for the THC have been the licensing process, which takes months and can be quite the murky waters to navigate, especially if you're in the LA region. So you just have to look around for where the regulations fit for what you're doing and how you can move through getting the licensing that you need. We were super lucky to get licensed. We have amazing customer loyalty. It's definitely heartening to walk into a dispensary and have a bud tender say, "Oh, I buy your product at Whole Foods." There's a great synergy between knowing that if you've got a loyal customer, then they'll move through the different channels with you. We have our strategic mainstream positioning. We hope to open doors, and when those doors come on to CBD and in future years THC, then we'll be a trusted partner through the food establishment. And we're closing our funding round in December. We have pretty awesome investors. We've never had so many investors in one room. I feel like I should take the last 2 minutes and just do a little investor update. But I know there have been challenges, especially for folks in CBD, because the landscape has changed so much, but we've been super fortunate, and we're positioned to launch our CBD brand nationally in Q1, and our THC brand in dispensaries in California in Q1 as well. Thank you.
I think if there are any questions back here, I just wanted to ask very quickly, what's been the impact on your business of starting the sort of infusion process?
Right, moving into cannabis.
Yeah.
So when we announced that we were moving into cannabis, there can be a polarizing effect, and some of our mainstream partners, colleagues, vendors, they wouldn't pick up a call from us. They wouldn't return a call. And that was great training for the cannabis community, because the follow-through is not always amazing. So you lose some partners, but the overall vision for our company is health and wellness, and full spectrum CBD and THC combats so many issues and provides such support and very practical plant-based answers for people that we thought it was worth the leap.
Well, we appreciate you taking the leap onto our stage, and thank you so much. It was terrific.
Thank you.